California Governor Gavin Newsome is missing. He's gone. Nobody knows where he is. Official reports are that he was at some wedding and he's doing family stuff. But a lot of people aren't buying it. And I think it's fair to say I don't buy it either. But I don't know what to tell you. I can't tell you exactly what's going on with the guy. The reason this story is actually a story is because the last public appearance he had was after getting a COVID booster shot. And now there are rumors that he developed Guillain-Barré syndrome. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that's true. We don't know what happened, but we do know that he canceled some very high-profile public appearances, notably talking about climate change, and a lot of people said there's no way he would cancel an opportunity to look presidential, because basically Gavin Newsom may be the only thing Democrats have as a potential 2024 nominee. I mean, some people are saying Buttigieg, but I think that's nuts. Why would Gavin Newsom vanish so suddenly? I mean, I got to be honest with you guys. If it were not for the New York Times and Fox News both asking the same question, I probably wouldn't look into it. But I think there's some interesting questions as it pertains to California and their policies and their mandates and what's been going on with COVID. But I think the simple solution could just be, I don't know, maybe someone in his family died and he took time off. Maybe someone in his family got sick and he's taking time off. Maybe he got sick himself. Maybe it's not even COVID. We really don't know. And it's difficult because everybody's trying to figure out what's going on and why he's away. But one thing is for certain, the Gavin Newsom administration is not being honest about what's happening with him. So we have this story from the New York Times. And I want to show you this, and then I want to show you Fox News, and then I want to talk about the rumors and speculation of some kind of vaccine injury, which I don't believe is true. But that's why I think this is getting interesting. And I'll also stress, I really didn't care to talk about Gavin Newsom going missing, but we have new data coming out of Florida, Florida and California, where things are getting really bad in California and things are getting really good things are really good in Florida, things are really bad in California. But check this out. Here's the story from the New York Times. Where's Governor Gavin Newsom? Even the New York Times is curious. He's in the office, according to an increasingly frustrated staff, but his critics on Twitter aren't buying it. The New York Times says 2 weeks ago, Governor Gavin Newsom announced he would be leading a delegation to the UN Climate Change Summit in Scotland. 4 days later, his office abruptly announced he had changed his mind. Family obligations was all his office would say, refusing to publicly elaborate in a decision that, times being what they are, unleashed a barrage of conspiracy theories. What conspiracy theory? There's no conspiracy theory, and that's conspiracy theory. Basically, at this point, just means hypothesis. So where is Governor Gavin Newsom? He got a booster shot, canceled a bunch of appearances. Some people are speculating that he had an adverse reaction to the vaccine, which they can happen, and that's it. And he's fine. He just had a bad day or whatever, and he's taking time off. There you go. That's not a conspiracy theory. They haven't issued any public statements about it for the most part anyway. Isn't it crazy that if you simply question something like the governor's not publicly available for 2 weeks for some reason, you can ask questions why? No, you're a conspiracy theorist. Was the governor having a bad reaction to the COVID-19 booster shot he had just gotten? Were any of his children, he has 4 ages 12 and under, infected again with coronavirus? No and no, Capitol sources said. That's not definitive proof of anything. We really don't know, but it doesn't mean he's not sick. Allies of the governor noted that most parents would understand why a couple with 4 small children might not want to take an extended trip to Glasgow over Halloween. California environmentalists also suggested that he might not be so wrong to skip the annual climate conference, which many of them view as a jet fuel wasting spectacle. Now, this is where it started getting weird to me. Newsom apparently was going to do a virtual appearance and canceled that too. So by all means, criticize all of the people who flew on private planes to Glasgow, but to try and deflect from Governor Gavin Newsom going missing after getting the booster shot by saying these things is just kind of like, hey, that's actually less credible. If they just came out and said evidence points to a family emergency, what more would anyone need to say? They say, in theory, California conservatives should also have welcomed the decision. When it appeared the governor might be summit-bound, Kevin Kiley, a Republican assemblyman who challenged the governor in the September recall election, wrote in a blog post that in the absence of our jet-setting governor, he was requesting a special session on the port crisis, holding oversight hearings on pandemic unemployment fraud, holding town hall events on the governor's vaccine mandate for school children, and calling for hearings on mask mandates in elementary school classrooms. If we don't fight for California, Kiley said, no one will. In any case, the governor, who was to have arrived at the summit on November 1st and taken a November 4th return flight, stayed home, working at his Capitol office, according to his spokeswoman, Erin Mellon. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, the former U.S. ambassador to Hungary, led the California delegation instead. Newsome released pictures of his family dressed as pirates at Halloween, announced some appointments, and set out some election night encouragement to fellow Democrats. Nevertheless, as days passed with no public appearances, chatter persisted. Quote, "I don't know where Gavin Newsom is and won't speculate," Kylie tweeted on Sunday. "But it's pretty strange for the governor to disappear for 11 days without explanation. It is extremely weird, especially when people are talking about how Newsom may be a Democrat contender in 2024. Where's Gavin? Demanded Charlie Kirk, the head of the right-wing activist group Turning Point USA. Quote, "It's funny how certain folks can't handle the truth," Jennifer Siebel Newsom, governor's wife, shot back in a tweet that was subsequently deleted. "When someone cancels something, maybe they're just in the office working. Maybe in their free time, they're at home with their family, at their kids' sports matches, or dining out with their wife. Please stop hating and get a life." I'm going to slow down right there. Disappearing for 11 days as a high-profile politician without notice, right after getting the booster shot, is the worst possible optics you could imagine for vaccine mandates. So we're seeing that the NBA's already basically said they're mandating vaccines, the booster shots. Now, they've said that it's a recommendation, but if you don't get the booster shot, you are subject to the same regulations as those who are unvaccinated. So, yeah, basically a vaccine mandate. This is not the time for a high-profile governor to vanish and not make a video and put out a statement or attend something virtually. It really does seem like something's wrong. By Monday, Gavin Newsom was trending on Twitter. Unsubstantiated conjecture included Bell's palsy, death, and that he and Kamala Harris are in an undisclosed secret location. Okay, that one's clearly absurd, but Bell's palsy is a maybe. It is not. It is rare that you get an adverse event with the vaccine of Bell's palsy or Guillain-Barré syndrome, which can result in weakness or paralysis. It's rare, but when you're talking about 300 million doses plus now the booster shots, sooner or later someone's going to be negatively impacted. There was a news story where they're criticizing Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan said something to the effect that he wasn't convinced Joe Biden actually got the vaccine booster because why would they risk it? My attitude is a simple solution. In the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions is probably the correct one. Joe Biden got the booster shot. Why? He's an old guy. They want him to get the vaccine. They get him the booster shot. If anything really bad happened, they just cut the feed and walk away like they always do. So I don't think they're giving out saline shots. I think when they say they're giving boosters, they're just giving boosters, right? Now, with Gavin Newsom, This is what people were talking about when it comes to Joe Biden and why they thought he didn't actually get the vaccine, because something bad like this, maybe, we don't know if it actually happened, but something bad could happen. This is why I think Biden actually did get the vaccine and why Newsom probably did get the vaccine. If a bad thing happened, this is what you'd expect. They would just be like, he's out for 2 weeks. I don't think it's the end of the world, and I think there's a lot to speculate, but I think I love the fact that the New York Times is getting on board because they can't deny that Gavin Newsom is missing. They said during a call with reporters, California senators at the Glasgow Climate Summit became increasingly frustrated with questions about the governor's absence. Once, twice, and a third time. Robert Hertzberg, a Democratic senator from Van Nuys, said the delegation got a heads up that a family issue would keep Newsom from joining them in Scotland. He added that he didn't know which events the governor would tune into virtually this week. Quote, "There's nobody in California who wanted to be at this conference more than Gavin Newsom," Hertzberg said on Monday. "But we're all human beings, man. We're all human beings. Something clearly, he's with his family. I don't think it's appropriate to further dig into it. I take him at face value, whatever it is. And sometimes you need to stay home." I got to call BS. He could easily put out a video being like, "Hey guys, I'm dealing with a family emergency and I apologize for being away, but everybody deals with something like this now and again. I hope to be back in the public eye and returning to these events very, very soon. But rest assured, I am working in my office. I have to take care of some personal family issues." How hard would that be? He didn't do it. He's not doing it. Maybe it's just building PR. Who knows? They say by the end of the day, the governor's office had issued a statement. Last week, Governor Newsom worked in the Capitol with staff on urgent issues, including COVID-19 vaccines for kids, boosters, ports, the forthcoming state budget, and California's continued economic recovery. He will have public events this week related to the economy and vaccines. In an interview, Mellon said the governor attended the Getty wedding ceremony, but not the reception. That the wedding was not the family obligation that kept him in California, that he always has been scheduled to return before the weekend, that he had been in his office alive and well all day on Monday, and that she had spent an hour and a half with him. No matter. As afternoon turned to evening, in California, tweeters were still tweeting, "Where is Gavin Newsome?" Kirk, the conservative activist, demanded again. Now, I don't know what to tell you about it, but I do think it's strange, and I do think it's interesting to bring up. We do have this story, however, from Newsweek. Gavin Newsome to make first public appearance in 2 weeks amid questions over absence. So that's the gist of the story. They said the governor's office announced Monday that he would take part in a fireside chat on Tuesday, Deadline reported. The summit would examine the Golden State's recovery from the COVID pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Once a fixture of daily press conferences during the early part of the pandemic, there have been questions about why Newsome has been out of the public eye since getting a COVID-19 booster shot on October 27th. I'm not going to speculate. I have no idea, but I'm going to read you the news when both the New York Times and Newsweek say that Gavin Newsome got a COVID booster shot and then disappeared for 2 weeks. I don't know what that means, but I can say this. I don't like to speculate. Show me the evidence. But adverse events happen. Bell's palsy happens. Guillain-Barré happens. And what we've been hearing a lot of with the booster shot is that I'm seeing these posts all over Facebook. I don't know if you've seen them. They say the first shot wasn't that bad. The second shot was pretty intense, and the booster was brutal. I've seen a lot of posts like that. Now, look, I'm not saying that's definitive evidence that everybody who's getting the booster is having a bad experience. I'm just saying it's evidence that there are some people who experience adverse events. By all means, go and talk to your doctor about what makes sense for you, and you got to make your own personal medical choices. Is it possible that Newsome suffered a moderate adverse event and you want to take some time off and relax? I think it's extremely likely. I think the problem is, I was talking about this last week with like Alec Baldwin and the shooting incident. And I know it's not necessarily, it's not particularly related, or it's not related to the story, but I think the media reaction is whenever something happens, we all, even those who question the media, have a bias to assume it can't happen here. So that kind of idea, like the idea that a governor couldn't have an adverse event from a vaccine, or the idea that he couldn't get sick or have something bad happen, people assume it can't happen. So what you end up with is a media bias saying everything's fine, he's with his family, he said so, calm down. But we have no reason to take their word for it, no reason to believe that what they're saying is more likely to be true and correct. When it came to Alec Baldwin, they said it was a blank, it was a misfire. And then we learned later on that he actually pulls the gun, points it, pulls the trigger at the woman, and there's a bullet in it. At that point, I'm like, why did we make all of those assumptions about what, giving the benefit of the doubt to these people? If the media wants to come out and try and act like nothing bad happened, I see no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt. I also see no evidence that he's actually suffering from anything, but I can say him disappearing is quite alarming. And as long as we know that adverse events happen, I think there's a good possibility, not necessarily a probability, but that he had an adverse event. He's taking time off. We will see, I suppose. But he's going to apparently come out and do his public event today. He's probably fine. And this will all be ignored eventually. But take a look at what's going on in California. There's another reason why I thought this was so important. At a time when California's COVID rate is now twice that of Florida's, when they're having very serious issues, the governor's nowhere to be found. That's why I think this is interesting. You've got a guy who he has no reason to disappear at one of the most crucial moments. But he did. Sounds like something happened to him. It's involuntary, and it stopped him from even making a video explaining it. So, I'll put it this way. This is Fox News. Masked California's COVID rate is now twice Florida's. We heard from the Republicans saying that all of these bad things are happening. We need, town hall meetings. We need debates on this stuff. Gavin Newsome, nowhere to be found. There is an urgency for the governor of California to come out and make public statements addressing these issues. He's not doing it. So that's why I think the idea of a family obligation is incorrect. I mean, it may be a family obligation considering like it's himself and he's got an obligation to his family to be healthy. Perhaps that's the angle they're going with. I think he's unwell. I think Gavin Newsome is unwell. I don't know for sure. I don't know. Fox News says California's coronavirus rate is double that of Florida despite mask mandates and recommendations to prevent the spread of the virus. Quote, You're paying for your success, which is weird. Ali H. Mokdad, professor of health metric sciences at the University of Washington, told the Mercury News when asked why Californians aren't reaping more reward for their adherence to health guidance. You succeed in controlling the virus, and now you're having infections. Cases in California are no longer falling, with the rate increasing to the CDC's red high level of the virus transmission stemming from the Delta variant, the outlet reported. But southern states, such as Texas and Florida, where state leaders do not enforce face mask policies or support other strict mandates, are in the CDC's orange substantial transmission level. I have some ideas about this. California's vaccination rate is higher than the states such as Texas and Florida, but that still hasn't stopped the outbreaks. 62% of California's total population is fully vaccinated, while Florida reports 60% and Texas 54%. Here's what I think. What we're seeing with the Delta variant, this is really interesting stuff. The Alpha variant of COVID was really bad. It was aggressive. It killed a lot of people. However, viruses that kill their host are not good viruses and eventually fade away because once people get sick, they seek treatment and then it stops transmission. The Delta variant is more infectious but less deadly. At least that's what's been reported. It makes sense. Over time, the strain that persists is one that's going to mutate to be less likely to cause serious harm because people then won't seek hospitalization. The virus will then persist, increasing infectivity because the more infectious virus is going to be able to infect more hosts, but being less lethal, less deadly, because then people will likely ignore it and spread it around. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And when you look at Florida and Texas, what ends up happening is you have people who didn't wear masks, gathered in large places, probably all got sick, probably got over it. Surprise, surprise. They probably have herd immunity by now. California and these other states that have been insanely strict have stopped people from developing herd immunity and are trying to rely on the vaccine alone, which now with the NBA saying they're going to do vaccine, booster mandates, I don't think is going to be enough to actually stop this. My opinion on this is that if we never locked down, we'd probably have less death. No joke, less death. First, you had the nursing homes, which these Democrat governors were psychotic and put sick patients in nursing homes, killing the elderly. If we didn't lock down, people would have gotten sick. Hospitals would have been overwhelmed. But people would have developed natural immunity, and ultimately it would have led, in my opinion, to herd immunity. In which case, too many people will have some degree of immunity, so that will stop the spread for the most part. Instead, you take a look at the data now, and I think it's obvious. The authoritarian lockdown states are doing bad. The freedom-oriented liberty states doing a lot better. Some people might say that it's because of the weather in the South, but California's also got comparable weather, so I don't think that's the case. Ultimately, I can't tell you. I can't. I can only say that Florida's got monoclonal antibodies. They have no restrictions. People are getting by just fine, and their COVID rates are down. Meanwhile, in California, their COVID rates are up. Their governor is nowhere to be found. Leadership is basically lost at this point. And I think people need to realize this is why decentralization is so much better than centralized authority or economies. To put it mildly, this is why communism doesn't work. When you have a place where people are free to choose to live as they want, there's risk. They can get sick. I know. I got sick. And all these leftists are like, Tim Pool opposes vaccine mandates, and then he got sick. What does government mandates have to do with people getting sick? I got treated. I'm all better. Actually, the treatment took like a day to work. It was incredible. If I want to assume those risks, that's on me. And I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like anybody's going to get sick from me. Someone went somewhere, brought it here. Hey, that's what happens. No one from here went anywhere else after the fact. So ultimately, we make our own choices. And I think when you do, things improve. Because people can make better choices for themselves. Not perfectly. Some people get sick. They go outside. They go on elevators. They sneeze. Dick move. Most people get sick and say, I'm going to stay home. I don't want to get anybody sick. The mandates make people, in my opinion, it makes it less likely to develop herd immunity. You think you can control these systems, you can't. You take a look at how centralized economies work throughout history, and you see the same thing. Some despot will say, we need more iron. So then they'll mandate everybody make iron, and then no one's doing other things, and then they destroy other tools, their farming tools, and then they all starve. I'm sort of paraphrasing the pig iron story in China. The point is, one person or a committee can't figure out what works best for everyone. They don't have the computational power. But the wisdom of the crowd works. So when you have a place that says, get back to business and do your thing, people find a way. They get sick, they don't come into work, less transmission. Some people still get sick, you develop herd immunity. In states where they've locked everything down with an iron fist, the economy is in shambles, people aren't working, and they're still getting sick. And now their governor is likely sick. And I'll tell you why I say likely. Again, I'm not saying I have evidence of anything. I'm just saying if he's disappeared for 2 weeks, maybe he got COVID. Maybe it has nothing to do with the booster shot. Maybe he has a breakthrough case and it's moderate to severe. If he wasn't sick, he could easily put out a quick video or do a virtual appearance. No, I think the dude's sick. I think he's sick. I don't know if I honestly don't believe it has anything to do with the vaccine. But I don't know. I think there's a possibility. And I ultimately think that he's probably sick. I think that's a fair assessment, but I don't know. Whatever, man. Who cares? It's Gavin Newsome. Where is he? We'll find out. Maybe he'll do his speech today and he's probably fine. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.